Hi, good evening and welcome to News. I am Nadia, bringing you the latest updates and important information to keep you safe and informed. Welcome to tonight's special report on occupational fraud. Okay, as we know, fraud is a hidden threat that affects organizations across the globe, undermining trust, finances, and operational integrity. The 2024 Association of Certified Fraud Examiner report to the nation has just been released, shedding light on the scale and nature of fraud.
This comprehensive report analyzed 1,921 cases of occupational fraud across 138 countries, covering the period from January 2022 to September 2023. The findings are both alarming and insightful. So let's start with the global impact. According to the report, total losses from fraud exceeded $3.1 billion, highlighting the widespread nature of this issue. On average, organizations lost $1.7 million per case, while the median loss stood at $145,000. These numbers underscore the significant financial burden fraud places on businesses and economies worldwide. In this segment, we take a closer look at the findings of a recent report on the most prevalent types of fraud schemes. The results highlight some disturbing trends and shed light on the different forms of fraud that are costing organizations millions. Here is what the report discovered. The report identified three key types of fraud that have emerged as the most common within organizations: asset misappropriation, corruption, and financial statement fraud. Let's break down each of these in more detail. First of all is asset misappropriation, which is the most common form of fraud, accounting for 89% of all cases. While it happens frequently, it tends to cause a relatively lower median loss of $120,000 million. This type of fraud involves the theft or misuse of the company assets, from cash to inventory, by employees or others with access. Next is corruption, found in nearly 48% of cases. While not as common, corruption is responsible for a higher median loss of $200,000. Examples include bribery, kickbacks, and conflicts of interest, where individuals abuse their power for personal gain. And finally, financial statement fraud. Though this type of fraud is the least common, appearing in just 5% of cases, it is by far the most damaging. With a staggering median loss of $766,000, financial statement fraud involves intentionally misrepresenting the financial health of an organization, often to deceive investors, regulators, or auditors. This finding underscores a crucial point. While asset misappropriation remains the most widespread form of fraud, it is financial statement fraud that poses the greatest risk to an organization's stability and reputation.
In recent years, Malaysia has witnessed several significant cases involving bank employees participating in scam and fraudulent activities, highlighting vulnerabilities in banking institution internal system. As reported previously in June 2024, 13 individuals, including 4 bank employees, were arrested in connection with the fraudulent withdrawal of 24.2 million ringgit from fixed deposit account. The suspects, aged between 22 and 54, were detained in Sabah and Perlis. The investigation ongoing under Section 420 of the Penal Code revealed that the involvement of a syndicate both inside and outside the bank, facilitating the unauthorized transactions. The fraud was discovered after the account holders and the bank staff reported suspicious withdrawal in the early June. Authorities believe that more individuals may be involved in this case. As the investigation continues, the bigger question remains: how can Malaysia's banking system ensure the integrity of its operations moving forward? With banking fraud becoming more sophisticated, can we trust that the necessary safeguards are in place to protect customer funds? So tonight, we bring you a special report on a growing concern in the financial world, a shocking case of fraud involving insiders within a major banking institution. In this special report, we will take an in-depth look at the details of the case, the role of the bank employees involved, and the larger implications on security and integrity of the Malaysia's banking system. To provide us with more insight into these findings, we now turn to our reporter, Ms. Nurin, who is on the ground with the expert in fraud and scams.
Ipoh Sessions Court has issued an order for 12 individuals to be held in remand under the Prevention of Crime Act 1959 for alleged involvement in a Macau scam syndicate involving losses amounting to 11 million ringgit. The 21-day remand order, which expires on December 23rd, was issued by Judge N. Priscilla Hemamalini. The suspects, who included 4 women, are all locals aged between 20 and 26.
Ya? Kenapa ya?
Saya call dari LHDN untuk maklumkan yang ada tunggakan teks sebanyak RM10,000.
Oh, tunggakan ya?
Betul.
Tak apa, nanti saya cek dengan LHDN sendiri ya. Terima kasih.
Hello.
Hi, I'm reporter Nurin of TV1, and today we are talking about something that affects everyone, which is fraud. Fraud is when someone tricks you, steal you money or personal information. It can happen to anyone, anytime, and in many different ways, like stealing your identity, scamming you online, or taking your money through fake jobs, online banking fraud, and fake business as well. Fraud is not only a personal loss, but it's a systematic threat. It has far-reaching consequences that can undermine national security, destabilize economic, and damage a country's international reputation. Whether committed by individuals or organized criminal groups, the financial proceeds from frauds are often funneled into further criminal activities, including terrorism. This cycle of crime only escalates the risk to both local and global security. You want to know, right, why people commit fraud? The reasons are often complex and multifaceted. Many are lured by the prospect of easy financial gain or succumb to pressure from external forces, whether it's the loss of employment, addiction, health problem, or crippling debts. In some cases, individuals rationalize their actions, feeling justified by the circumstances or blinded by the potential reward. However, it's clear that fraud is rarely about one-time mistakes. It is often the result of an ongoing series of bad decisions and external pressure. Today, I'll be investigating and preparing a report of a recent series of fraud incidents in Malaysia, examining the scope of the issues, how it impacts the nation, and what can be done to mitigate this risk. Here, I'll be speaking with a fraud expert to understand the root causes of those crimes, as well as engaging with those who have been affected by or involved in these fraudulent activities and law. A report with a shocking case of a fraud that has sent ripple through the financial community on July 24, Kota Kinabalu in Sabah. Recently, a major fraud scheme was uncovered at Apto Bank, where a total of 10 individuals, including a senior bank manager, have been implicated in the illegal siphoning of over 30 million from several fixed deposit accounts. We will be speaking directly with the one of the offender to understand their motive and action in this elaborate fraud. Let's go. Thank you for joining us today. First of all, I would like to ask how things have been for you recently. I believe the case might shock the whole nation. Maybe perhaps you share some of your thoughts or experience from the past that might shed light on how things are progressing. And I think it's affect your life, right?
Well, honestly, it wasn't something that I was proud of and ever thought I ever do it. So yeah, you could guess that I am kind of the last person that you expect to be involved in something like this, right? I work at the bank as assistant manager for more than 20 years and I had a lot of access to customer account, and at first it seemed like no one would notice if I just took a tiny bit from here and there. It started off with a pretty small amount, honestly. I didn't plan it into turning into anything huge, but as you can imagine it apparently did with the help of other people, of course. At first, financial pressure was part of the motive why I started this fraudulent activity. I was just trying to cover some bills, and didn't feel like it was a big deal. Honestly, the more I took, the harder it was to stop. By the time I realized how deep I was in, it was just too late.
So you were working with others in the bank, right? How did this syndicate operate?
Yes, there were others. It wasn't just me. We all had different access to different part of the system, so we kind of helping each other. Our syndicate is able to produce a fake identity card that can be used in the bank to the point of manipulating the fingerprint scanner used by the bank. Some of us would handle the transfer and we make sure the whole thing stayed under the radar. And honestly, I didn't think about the customers at all. I guess the combination of temptation and greed makes me agree to continue doing this fraud. And the worst part is I never stopped to think about the real consequences for the customer or for the bank.
So do you think the bank could have done more to prevent the fraud from happening? Where the internal controls in the place to catch such fraud?
Looking back, I think the bank did have some internal controls, but they were weak. There were gaps in the monitoring system and I took advantage of that. I'm not blaming the bank entirely, but honestly, I think if the bank had stronger auditing system and more scrutiny on transactions, we might not have been able to get away with it for as long as we did. The system was vulnerable and I exploited that. I should have reported the weakness or raised my concern, but I didn't.
So thank you for being open with us today. I know this is a difficult time for you, but your story could serve as warning for others. I hope it helps others realize that integrity is something worth holding on to no matter the temptations.
Yeah, I hope so too. Thank you for giving me the chance to speak about it. I have learned my lesson through the hardest way that I could ever imagine. I was sentenced under Penal Code 408 and upon hearing that I have to serve in prison for 10 years, my whole world crumbled down instantly. I hope other people will not dare to commit such crime and letting down your loved one. Don't ever think to self-sabotage your good life by taking something that is not yours.
I wish you all the best and try to be a better version on yourself in future. From here, I would like to highlight that as we have heard, this issue is not limited just at Apto Bank. Similar fraudulent activities are also occurring across various parts of Malaysia. As mentioned just now, we are seeing an increasing number of cases related to fraud risk issues. This trend highlights the growing needs for effective measures and stronger oversight to address and prevent fraud in various sectors across the country. To gain deeper insight in this issue, we will now seek to the expert opinion of Dr. Hafiza, a senior auditor from one of the Big Four accounting firms. Hafiza will provide her professional overview on fraud risk assessment, preventive measure and critical areas that need attention to reduce fraud cases in Malaysia. Hello, Assalamualaikum Doctor. How are you?
Salam, good. Have a seat.
Thank you, Doctor, for taking time to meet with me today. I truly appreciate your willingness to share your expertise. I'm here to learn more about fraud risk assessment and why it's such a crucial element when conducting audit or reviewing financial reports, and how these situations on your point of view. But before that, I really want to know about your professional backgrounds.
Okay, I've been in this field for over 10 years. So primarily, I'm focusing on the financial audit and also the risk assessment. I recently worked on a project where we streamline on the compliance process for a major company. We saved them a significant time and also resources. That I really enjoy using the data-driven approach to help business make better decisions.
So, Doctor, what do you think the most reason people in Malaysia committing fraud in their workplace?
Okay, most of the reason people committing the fraud is their organization due to lack of their work ethic in themselves. So type of the fraud normally also vary by a business line, which internal fraud includes embezzle and also misappropriation of the asset, while the external fraud includes provider fraud and the theft of proprietary information.
Then, from the auditor's perspective, did you agree that fraud risk assessment is important for auditor to detect any fraud in the organizations?
Yes, it is. So under ISA 120, it's a responsible of auditor relaxing to fraud in an audit for financial statements. Then the auditor should examine the company asset, financial document, and also the disclosure. And this process seek to identify fraud risk to the organization. It also both on for the internet and also the external fraud, and it will analyze those risks and develop an action plan for mitigating or controlling those risks.
So, Doctor, I think this is the most important question that I need to ask. What is the step for auditor while doing audit of fraud risk assessment?
Normally, the auditor will need to do these 5 steps, which is the firstly, we need to identify the risk. The factors that influence the fraud risk are the nature of business and the environment in which it operates, the effectiveness of internal control, and the ethics and values of the company and its employees. Then second, we need to quantify the risk by assessing the likelihood of occurrence of the identified risk and their significance to the organization. Then we quantify the risk, we will develop a mitigation strategy and assign the responsibility for its implementation. This is to ensure that the strategy outlines clear steps to reduce the risk and designates the individual or team accountable for executing and monitoring its effectiveness. Fourth step is the fraud risk assessment must be refreshed to respond to the changing risk and environment by a process that required ongoing monitoring and also its reviews. And lastly, when presenting the result of fraud risk assessment, we need to maintain objectivity, highlight specific and measurable action to drive meaningful outcome, and recommend control activities that effectively mitigate the risk of fraud. In some dire cases, reporting on fraud may need to involve law enforcement. The company's threshold and policy for involvement law enforcement in case of fraud should be clearly documentation and avoid misunderstandings.
Okay, Doctor. On the last question, from your opinion, how can auditors do in preventing this fraud issue repeating happen in the organizations?
Okay, by the way, preventing fraud is primarily the responsibility of the management itself. But as an auditor, we can contribute significantly to fraud prevention by identifying risks, strengthening the controls, and fostering a fraud-resistant environment. And this will help organizations build a strong defense and also fraud, while fostering a culture of transparency and accountability.
Okay, Doctor. Thank you. I hope we can see you again. And thank you for the sharing moment.
Okay, thank you.
As per mentioned earlier, it is essential that any identified fraud risk is reported promptly, particularly when it involves significant breaches that require law enforcement interventions. In Malaysia, both the Malaysian Corruption Commissions, MSCC, and the police play a crucial role in investigating such cases. It is important for organizations to report any type of fraud to these authorities to ensure a true investigation and appropriate legal action. Let's go. Hello, hi, how are you? Good. Okay, thank you for joining us today. As we all know, nations has very lots enforcement agencies, but when it comes to handling fraud cases, 2 key organizations stand out: Malaysian Anti-Corruption and the Royal Malaysian Police. Perhaps you could share with us your experience, particularly in your previous roles with the police, and how your background has shaped your approach to tackling such cases with MSCC, and what are most common scams reported to PDRM?
The most common scams include phishing email, fake website, job scam, and investment fraud. We also seen a rise in scam where criminal impersonate officials from PDRM or other government agencies demanding payment for alleged legal offences. These scams are highly convincing, which is why many people fall victim. Besides that, love scam often target vulnerable individuals, leading to significant emotional and financial losses, as seen in recent case where a student lost nearly 50,000 ringgit. Phishing remains as a major issue, with scammers using fake links to steal sensitive information. Digital wallet also scams are also increasing, exploiting the widespread adoption of e-wallet like Touch-n-Go and Boost.
And the MSCC is quite a big role. Perhaps you can share the roles and how do you tackle the issues?
Okay, as we know, the MSCC plays a pivotal role in addressing fraud cases.
particularly those involving corruption, abuse of power and mismanagement of public resources. MACC will investigate allegations of corruption and fraud. It has the authority to probe and gather evidence, often working in collaboration with other law enforcement agencies. Fraud involving public funds, embezzlement, bribery and abuse of power are under its purview.
Maybe Inspector, you can explain me how significant is the problem of online financial scam in the country?
Online financial scams are a significant issue in Malaysia. Over the past few years, we have seen a steady increase in reported cases. For example, as mentioned in a recent study, cases jumping from 13,700 in 2019 to 25,000 in 2022, with reported loss escalating to 850 million last year. This figure underscores the urgent need to address this growing threat.
Maybe from your side, Inspector, what are the most common tactics used by these scam syndicates?
Scammers frequently impersonate government officials, bank representative or officer from enforcement agency like PDRM. They contact victims through phone call, SMS or email, claiming that the victim has committed an offence or needs to pay overdue fines. This tactic creates a sense of urgency, which often pressures victims into compliance.
One, I think maybe people take this issue for granted due to lack of governance. But on a serious note, what are the acts that governs on fraud, cheating or criminal misconduct to ensure those who committed to the crime and can be punished and charged accordingly, as we know no one is above the law?
In Malaysia, fraud is addressed under several legal frameworks, each prescribing specific penalties for offenders. There are 4 key provisions, such as Section 17A, corporate liability, Section 18, bribery and corruption, Section 23, abuse of power, and Section 409, criminal breach of trust. Punishment that can be used for fraud under MACC Act are the first one is offender can be imprisonment that lead for up to 20 years. The offender may also face hefty fines, often amounting to 5 times the value of the bribe or fraud committed, or Rm 10,000, whichever is higher, and if the offender is a public official or corporate officer, may be disqualified from holding future position or trust or responsibility.
Thank you, Puan. Inspector, under PDRM, what action taken to combat these crimes?
We have intensified our effort through the Commercial Crime Investigation Department or CCID. This includes tracking fraudulent bank account and number using our Semak Mule platform, working closely with bank and financial institutions, and raising public awareness. We also work with school, university to teach our youngest tech-savvy demographic who are frequent target. Additionally, we collaborate with international enforcement agencies to tackle cross-border syndicate.
Puan, maybe you can share some of your experience as MACC officer.
The latest one was in November 2024. MACC remanded a company owner suspected of submitting fraudulent claims totaling approximately Rm 10 million using falsified documents between 2019 and 2024. The suspect, who was a former senior engineering manager of a basic goods manufacturing company, was arrested. Follows the detention, is suspected of submitting false claims for repair work and bribing company staff to approve the same. He was involved in a fraudulent claim and fraud amounting to approximately 2 million ringgit Malaysia on Wednesday.
By the way, Inspector, how effective has the Semak Mule platform been preventing scams?
Semak Mule has been a game changer. Since its launch, it's helped identify thousands of fraudulent accounts and phone numbers. It's empowered the public to verify suspicious information before engaging in transaction, significantly reducing number of potential victims.
By the way, Puan, maybe you can share what are the expertise of MACC in investigating the fraud issues?
The MACC employs various strategies and methods such as Financial Analysis Division that provide investigative support by offering financial analysis assistance, crucial in uncovering complex financial fraud schemes. Furthermore, MACC use of polygraph tests in its investigation to enhance the accuracy and effectiveness of its interrogation. The accuracy of these tests can reach up to 97%, aiding in resolving complex cases, and the MACC utilize forensic accounting technique to detect and investigate financial discrepancies and fraudulent activities. This approach involves analyzing financial record to uncover evidence of fraud and is a critical component in the investigation process. The MACC's expertise is further demonstrated through its involvement in high-profile cases such as the investigation into the One Malaysia Development Berhad 1MDB scandal, which led to the conviction of former Prime Minister Najib Razak on charges of corruption and money laundering. In addition to its investigative function, the MACC emphasized the importance of preventive measures. It requires each department to perform fraud and corruption risk assessment as part of their normal risk management processes, promoting a proactive approach to fraud deterrence. The MACC's comprehensive approach to combating fraud and corruption, combining investigative expertise with preventive strategies, underscores its pivotal role in maintaining integrity within Malaysia's public and private sectors.
It is clear that reducing fraud in Malaysia requires a concerted effort from all sectors, law enforcement, business and individuals alike. The mission is not just to identify and punish fraudsters, but to implement preventative measures that address the root cause and vulnerabilities in our system. With stronger regulations, enhanced awareness and active collaboration between agencies like MACC and RMP, we can work towards significantly reducing the occurrence of fraud in the country. Until we meet again in another special report, I will now pass to Nadia for further analysis. Thank you.
Thank you, Nurin. Therefore, fraud is a pervasive issue that affects individual, organization, and entire nations. Tonight, we conclude our special report on fraud risk by summarizing our findings and offering recommendations for a more secure and transparent future. Fraud is not just a financial issue. It is a systematic threat that undermines trust, stability, and security at all levels. Despite all the efforts by the Malaysian Anti-Corruption Commission (MACC) and the Royal Malaysia Police (RMP), fraud persists due to weak internal control, evolving technological exploitation, and gaps in ethical practices. However, solutions are within reach, and with a concerted effort, these challenges can be addressed. To effectively prevent fraud, strengthening internal control is the main segment to reduce this case. Regular audits and compliance checks are essential. This measure help the organization to identify weaknesses in processes that could be exploited by the fraudsters. Experts also recommend that the internal audit must be thorough and frequent, serving as the first line of the defense against any form of fraud. Another key aspect in fraud prevention is employee and customer awareness. Experts also suggest that the organization should invest in regular training program for the employees and enabling them to identify and report suspicious activities. Additionally, businesses also are encouraged to launch educational campaign for the customers, teaching them on how and what is the best practice for protecting their personal and financial information from fraud. As we have seen, reducing fraud in Malaysia requires a collective effort. The mission is not just to identify and punish the fraudster, but to address the root causes and the vulnerabilities in our systems. With stronger regulations, enhanced awareness, and active collaborations between agencies like the MACC and RMP, we can work toward a safer and a more transparent future. Thank you for staying with us for this special report. I am Nadia. Have a secure and fraud-free evening.